anything you're doing as a business, you should put it through this good, different kind of like exercise, which is to say, if you have an X and Y axis and you have different quadrants, Y axis represents good and the X axis represents different. And every tent is the same at the end of the day. They have some different features that's like...
Well, you've got like the spring bar versions, and then you've got the...
a little more lightweight.
Then you have the lightweight pack.
Or, oh, hey, we added like LED lights to it, which are cool features, but are they different enough to make somebody say, I'm going to buy that? You've based your entire product development strategy off of a core problem that the most savant campers have and the most basic campers have.
Right.
Which is, hey, everyone has a hard time sleeping.
Yep.
And I think that that's the brilliance of what you're doing with Haven, and every product that you're creating, it still solves that problem. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Unstoppable Marketer Podcast. With me, as always, is Mark Goldhart. Mark Goldhart, how are you?
Doing, I'm so tired.
Yeah, I am tired too.
Last night just destroyed me.
Mark and I decided to go see a client. It wasn't really last minute, but we decided, like normally when we go visit clients, if they're close by, we drive, obviously.
Close by, like usually like if within an hour to 2 hours.
An hour or something like that. But these guys are like 4 hours away in the same state. And normally we would fly. But like at the end of, like usually when we see clients, like I don't love staying overnight. Like I just want to get back to my family as quick as possible. And so we're like, well, let's just drive.
And there wasn't a flight back.
That's right. The flight would have had to come back the next day.
Yeah. So we would have had to stay the night.
Yeah. And so, and at the end of the day, like
2020 probably just should have done that, but yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, we woke up, we were on the road at 6:30, met with a client. No, well, it took us like 5 hours to get there. Normally like a 3 hour, 45-minute drive, but we drove the Tesla.
It took 4 hours from your area.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't.
It did.
It didn't.
I promise.
Well, we did agree to disagree on that one. But anyways, we had to stop twice.
Because we left
Tesla.
Well, anyways, we left your area at 7. We got down there at like 11:15.
Okay. Number one.
So Tesla makes it longer.
Yep.
We love our Teslas.
Which wasn't bad. On the way,
Trevor has one. It was great.
It wasn't bad on the way there. Because like we're talking about things that we need to talk about that we oftentimes don't get time to talk about.
True.
So it was good, right? Like we have a 4-hour meeting, which was fine.
But the way home, I was like, man.
But then we met all day. We left at 7:30, and that's when like all hell broke loose. And we had to stop 3 times because it was so cold.
But I will say this for Elon Musk, if self-driving could just self-drive and like not monitor me, like if I could just fall asleep while it self-drive, I would pay $200 a month for that easy.
Oh, I'd pay like $400 a month for that.
I don't know about $400.
You know?
I turned it on and off if it was $400.
Yeah, the self-driving was
hard.
But
I'd just leave it on all the time, like for $200 a month.
So yeah, that was rough. We had to stop 3 times because it was like 18 degrees driving, so the charge wouldn't charge fast just because batteries and...
Well, it was at the one... And anyways, yeah it was at one station, wasn't others. It was silly.
It was an awesome meeting. If the client's listening to this, it was an awesome meeting.
Well worth
we
it.
are very grateful
it was well
we did
worth
it.
And you made the planet
totally
better.
Worth it. Yes.
Low emissions.
Yeah,
low emissions.
Yeah, exactly.
Much better emissions than my 4Runner.
Yeah, very true.
The 4Runner is not emission friendly, but
we're dedicated.
So I'm sorry. I'm a little tired, but I am very excited.
We have
about our guest and the product he makes and the industry it's in.
Yeah, should we introduce him?
Yeah,
he's been just sitting here, just so quietly, just listening to our.
I've been enjoying this story.
Yeah,
it's great.
Oh.
So let's introduce our guest today. Is the CEO and founder of an awesome product called Haven Tents, Derek Tiltson. Derek, how are you, my friend?
Doing so well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for being on.
Thanks for coming on.
I've been a long-time listener.
Thank you.
That's why I like originally reached out to Derek, was because I post content on my phone, and I'm like, Derek, I can always expect a like and or a comment about anything we post.
Well, the algorithm knows. I wake
Tents.
up in the morning and like the first thing that I do is like I see Trevor's just great advice about marketing and say, all right, this is my okay, great. I'm energized now. I'm going to start my day.
Look at you.
So I was like, I looked
He's
it,
right
I
there
looked it
for
up
me.
and I'm like,
Look
well,
at that.
this guy's like, he's doing something. Like he's got something really good going here. And so and then I saw in his in the bio of what Haven Tents is, it says Sandy, Utah. And I'm like, Sandy, Utah? Like,
Oh, this guy.
our office is in Draper. I grew up in Sandy. And I'm like, what's up, man? Like, I'm like, oh, when I said, are you from Sandy? And he's like, yeah, I grew up in Sandy. I'm like, where'd you go to high school? We're like, Alta. And I was like, I went to Alta. He's like, I graduated in 04.
04, yeah.
I was like, I was 06. And then he's like, my name's Derek Tiltson. I'm like, I know Blake. Yeah. In fact, I've spent tons of time with, like, Blake was.
And Blake is your friend.
Well, Blake was friends of friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Blake had his group of buddies, which was like, I would say the basketball soccer-y team, because he played basketball and soccer. Did he end up playing soccer or basketball for Utah State?
He played basketball for Utah State, played soccer for BYU.
Oh, he went down.
So,
okay, cool.
yeah, he could pick his sport.
He was a really great athlete.
Shout out to Blake.
Yeah,
A
really.
D1 athlete for 2 different schools and 2 different sports. That's pretty impressive.
Little Deion Sandery,
That's pretty cool.
So anyways, yeah. So Blake had his group of buddies, and then I had my group of buddies, and my group of buddies was like friends with his group of buddies.
Yeah.
So like we weren't necessarily I'm not calling Blake to be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm calling my buddies. We go to a party, we see Blake and his friends at a party, and then we're all together. That was, does that make sense relationship wise? Yeah. So yeah, know Blake very well, and I knew of you, but I didn't know you.
Cool.
And you knew my sister and sister-in-law.
Went to school with them.
Small world. Utah's a fun hub for e-commerce. It's underrated.
It is. And it's been fun to kind of get to know the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, meet different founders and,
Totally. Yeah.
Marketers like yourselves.
Wow.
That is fun.
Well, let's jump into the podcast
But
here.
more fun is this hammock tent.
Yeah. So I want to hear, let's jump into your story a little bit and let's jump into the product, because this product is like, the product was one of the main reasons why, like in my mind, I was like, I don't even need to ask what your sales are. I don't care if you're selling $10,000 a month or if you're selling $1 million a month. Like, this is a really cool story. And I think it's a huge, huge lesson, no matter what level of success you've accomplished. Right. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about the product. Let's talk about you. So let's give you the floor for a second, and then we'll jump into
Thanks
things.
for having me on. Yeah. So sales by background, spent a lot of time in, sales and marketing and in storytelling. And I was just laying in a hammock one day and thought this would be so much better if I was flat. I'm sure a lot of people have been in hammocks before, and they know that bends them like a banana, or it like kind of constricts them, pins their feet together or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of reasons why people enjoy hammocks for like 10 seconds or 10 minutes.
Totally.
But not for a whole night.
Yeah.
And so that was me. I was not a hammock camper. It wasn't like I spent all this time camping in hammocks. I thought, let me just, refine this just a little bit. I was a complete outsider and thought, how could I make this thing different? I never spent any time making a product. I'd never done that at all. But earlier that year, my wife and I had sold our house and we went to travel with our 3 kids for a year. Went to 38 countries in a year. And as I was traveling, I was creating content for hotels and travel companies to kind of like fund our travel. We weren't getting paid for it, but we were getting a lot of free stuff, which was fun. Sure. But I was creating all of this content, and I set a goal to make that year my year of creativity. And so I have this idea for a hammock or a hammock design. And before I put it to bed, I thought, no, this is my year of creativity. So let me take it to at least the first prototype. And the first prototype was actually pretty good. It was a lot better than our second and our third. But we continued to evolve and figure out exactly what made that first prototype so great, and continued to tweak and develop and build. Then we launched on Kickstarter in 2019. Did just under 100,000 in sales as part of our first Kickstarter. But
what was the goal? Kickstarter goal?
It was like 20,000 or something.
That's cool.
And so, but it was completely bootstrapped. Like, it was literally just me. I made the video, I made all of the things. Like, it was literally just a one-man show at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember I had told such a good story. This is the most comfortable way to sleep outside, is basically what I had pitched on this Kickstarter campaign. And so when this like little mini container of tents showed up at our office in Sandy, I was like, oh my gosh, like, Kickstarter is the perfect example of like jumping and learning to fly on the way down, because I literally told everybody this is the best thing ever.
Right.
And now I'm going to start shipping it. And are people going to be disappointed?
Yeah.
Are they going to be impressed? And so I'm like shaking as I put these tents in boxes, like with nerves.
Sure.
And shipped them out, and they loved it. The people, the customers, our first batch customers loved the product.
Yeah.
And so we saw that, you would go camping with your friends and you would actually sleep better.
Yeah.
Our product is demonstrably better at providing sleep outside. And I don't think you can say that about a tent or a regular hammock. It's just like different ways of, mitigating the worst case scenario, which is camping, which is for most people, sleeping outside.
Totally.
And so this is a huge improvement on that.
Yeah.
And so we've continued to grow, year over year. It's been great. We've been in business now for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's been an awesome ride. I never would have thought, 6 years ago that I'd be here on a podcast talking about marketing and hammock companies, but it's been great.
Wait, explain why it's demonstrably better for sleep.
Okay. I mean, if anybody who's ever tried to sleep outside on a tent, on a pad or in a hammock, they know that it's a far cry from sleeping in their bed at home.
Sure.
It's super different, right? And maybe after a few nights, you'll be tired enough and sleep deprived enough that you can make it through a night. But normally when I'm camping and sleeping on a pad on the ground, I wake up at like 3 and then I'm not tired enough to go back to sleep. And that weighs on the rest of your day because now you're tired. And so the fact that this is much more like the at-home sleep experience, you basically just carried your bed from home outside. It feels so much more like your bed at home than anything else.
Well, I would probably say also I haven't used the product yet, but as your probably more stereotypical Utah that isn't an avid camper, like I camp once to twice a year and generally no more than like 2 nights.
Right.
Like and I would say that's like I bet that's actually the average Utah. Now you have some Utahns who are like,
well, your true average is less than that. But
you're true. Yeah. But like most, like if you're an
Outdoorsy
avid camper,
people,
outdoorsy, obviously that's very different, right? You're a lot more outdoorsy than I am. And like, there's 3 reasons why I hate camping, and all 3, I shouldn't say hate camping. Why camping, I don't do camping more often. And all 3 of those reasons have to do with sleeping. And the first is like, 1, if I don't have the right comfort of pad, that's what makes it hard for me. 2, I'm never level, right?
Yeah.
And 3, when I'm on the ground, dependent upon what time of year, I'm like really cold.
Mm-hmm.
Like even though I'm in a sleeping bag, I just don't like a sleeping bag, So I wonder if this one levels you out more from depending on where you are at. The pad, right? I don't know. It sounds like it's really comfortable.
It's a thick pad, and if you lay our pad on the ground, which we do at shows sometimes, we'll lay the pad on the ground, and people lay on it, and it's a comfortable pad. But then they put it in the mattress in the hammock, and it's just that much better.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, because the hammock provides more of a it's more level.
Yeah,
yeah.
And that to me actually almost seems like the best.
But it probably makes you feel like there's a little more give too, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a little. What do you say, like buoyancy? But that's with water. Like,
sure,
like you got a little.
If you watch the mattress commercials that you've seen a million times, they always show the person's spine and the body's kind of contouring and the spine is straight, and that's what our hammock does. And for people that don't know what a Haven tent is, it's a lay flat hammock tent that's built around a pad. Yeah. So where a lot of people kind of throw in a pad as an afterthought into a hammock for insulation or for some stability, we actually built it from the ground up. How can we make this pad float in the air?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the idea around it.
Yeah. Super cool.
Well, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe people sleep a lot better because
I'm very excited for your take on it when you use it.
Yeah. I mean, again, sleeping, like he said, we bought a camping trailer for our family so that my wife could sleep. She loves camping, but we had to get a trailer because she's like, I can't sleep out here. And it was just, it was miserable. And then obviously we have we have little kids, a 1-year-old. So that also changes things a little bit. But for me, I go up without kids just for a fly fishing trip with some friends, at least once or twice a year.
Right.
And I would usually do a hammock.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't sleep good at all.
Yeah.
That sounds miserable to me. A hammock.
Waking up and fly fishing makes it worth it, but
for sure,
this would be far better.
So why would you go hammock over just regular ground tent?
Because it's like, if you're only up there for a night, it's usually like, hey, let's go up there, fish, sleep, fish, leave. I'm not going to set up a whole tent.
So the quick setup is kind of what you're
I just want to get something set up. I want to sleep.
Yeah.
I don't want to carry a bunch of equipment because I already got my fly fishing gear.
Right.
So that's why I would do a hammock.
Okay, cool.
So tell me, what do you think, like you set a goal of 20K on Kickstarter and you end up doing over 100K. What do you think was the catalyst that was able to help you skip, what was that, a 5X of what your goal was? Like, what do you think about it did that for you?
I think it was the promises that I was making and the story I was telling and how many people it kind of resonated with, right?
Yeah.
Where when I was explaining what our product did, you started to kind of connect the dots. Wow,
Sure.
I love camping. I love being outside, but the 3 reasons why I don't like it are sleep.
Yeah.
Are all sleep related.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of come in and solve that.
Yeah.
And we say we can make the outdoors comfortable.
Sure.
And so I think that initial value add was what carried us over the top. I got to say that the video was okay, subpar. It definitely looked homemade. So I think that we carried some of that, like, oh, this is a legitimate startup. We know that by supporting this company, we were supporting this guy who's an entrepreneur. Like, it definitely had some of that to it too. But I think it was just connecting those dots for people of comfort outside.
Did you guys run ads to it?
We did run some ads.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Through Meta?
Through Meta.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, everything that I did was kind of like, oh, I guess we're supposed to run ads. How does that work? Like, I don't know. And everything was kind of like just kind of stumbling forward.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine had run some ads. So he stepped in and helped us run some ads and things. And
well, Kickstarter is interesting, right? Because I feel like the heyday of Kickstarter was maybe
2014,
12, 14 is what I was going to think. You know, I'm not a huge Kickstarter guy, so I can't sit here to say like I know exactly what to do and how to do. But if I remember right, that was when like, if you created a good video and a good story,
like Nomadic was a big Kickstarter story from Utah. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I think
Chirp,
Fawn Design
was Fawn.
I believe so.
Yeah, they might have been. Rags might have been as well.
I don't know about
Was
Rags.
Thread Wallets one?
I don't remember. But for sure, Nomadic was a big.
Yeah, I know Chirp was for a fact. But anyways, you kind of
Qualitree.
Yeah, they still do that. Yeah. You kind of hit Kickstarter on the tail end of when it was, I don't want to use the word easy because nothing's easy, but it got so much more competitive and so many more products and it just wasn't as easy. What was the other one? Kickstarter and then
Indiegogo.
Yeah, when Indiegogo, right? So to me, like my first thought is like, I think between the story you tell and the problems that it solves, but also just the sheer fact that the product is very different. Like it is very different. I know people create like you're not the only person who creates a flat bed hammock.
Yeah.
But it's so different from anything I've seen. And I like one of my favorite quotes. We had a guy on the podcast. He, why can't I forget his name? Anyway, he's the CMO of Bruce Bolt. Chris Hall. Is that his name? The e-com cowboy.
Yeah.
That's, I know him from Twitter. Right? We had him on the podcast. Bruce Bolt's like batting gloves.
Okay.
For kids.
For kids, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That just exploded, like $100 million+ company.
Wild.
And he said this quote that I always think about all the time. And he says, behind every great marketer is a better product.
Yeah, definitely.
And so like, I think it's like, there's this storytelling, which is the marketing. And then there's the product, which is just like, sometimes when you have a great product, it doesn't matter the story. Like the product tells the story itself. And so how important has product development been for you since the first launch to now?
Yeah, it's been huge. I think word of mouth has been one of our biggest drivers, where you'll go on this next fly fishing trip with your Haven tent and your buddies they'll want to hop in and try it out and say, wow, this is more comfortable than what I have. And then they're going to spend all night tossing and turning, sliding off their pad, being at a weird angle, being cold or whatever, right? And they're going to say, oh, next year I'm going to get this. And we've seen some of those early Kickstarter supporters now go on hunting trips and they have 7 Haven tents all set up with their crew, which has been fun to see. So the fact that the product is out there telling the story for you makes it so much easier.
Sure.
Because you just got to have that core. But yeah, I would say as far as our success and growth within Haven tents, it's been on the merits of our product. I feel like I'm maybe an above average storyteller, but like not that great. The product has definitely made it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your process for developing the product?
It was taking that initial idea and then sketching, doing thought experiments, trying to figure it out, building paper models initially. Like when I look back and think of the fact that it's here, it's kind of a miracle based off of how poor my skills were when I was starting.
Sure.
We're going to we did another Kickstarter a few years ago for the Safari version of the tent, which is the, canvas version of the hammock. And that did just over 400,000. And we're doing another Kickstarter this year for an ultralight version of our hammock.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we're going to do. It's funny, the first Kickstarter, I went total bootstrap, and my whole goal was I'm going to fund the first round of production. Yeah. That was the goal.
Yeah.
And we did it. That's what we were able to do. For the second, Kickstarter, I started to kind of listen to all of the marketing hype around Kickstarter. Like, no, it's about finding customers. It's about reaching an audience. You're not supposed to make money through Kickstarter. And so I kind of took that approach. We did a whole lot more in sales, but we actually didn't make any money through the process. I mean, granted, we acquired customers and you get your name out there and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, this time I think I'm going to do a happy medium of a blend. Sure. And so if it ends up being more than 400,000, great.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily, shooting for like just the most we can possibly sell by just pumping a ton of money into ads either. Yeah. Like I want it to be an organic, natural campaign that actually helps our brand too. So
tell the audience why you guys utilize Kickstarter versus capital that you may or may not have just to create it up by yourselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could do it ourselves, right? We could just run ads or whatever, but I think that Kickstarter gives you it's a public validation tool. So people aren't, they're able to see, wow, 1,000 other people are buying this already, which makes it easy for them to adopt. It kind of sits out there as a bit of a beacon in a different space as well. You're able to market differently. You're able to be excited about it in a different way.
Sure.
Also, the model the success that we've had within Kickstarter in the US has been replicated through partners in Japan. So we have a partner in Japan. Okay. Once we do a campaign, they'll go and do it in Japan, and they'll usually beat our campaigns.
Oh, wild.
And so kind of setting an example of, okay, how successful is this product in the US?
Yeah.
And then we can talk to our partners in Norway. We can talk to other retailers and things and say, hey, look what this is proof that there's demand for this.
Totally. I asked the question just because one, I think that there's definitely some brands out there that focus on product development, but you have a lot. There was a point in time like where. Okay, let's go through a timeline here. So I feel like in the 2012 to 2017 realm, it was really, really hard to start a brand. Primarily because you couldn't click a couple buttons and find a manufacturer, right? So, and Alibaba didn't exist. Amazon was not what Amazon was. Drop shipping didn't really exist. I mean, it did, but it didn't, not at the scale that it was. And so the barrier of entry to build a website, to manufacture a product, to raise capital, to, it was really hard. In fact, the only thing back then that made the barrier of entry easier was Kickstarter, in my opinion.
Right.
Right? Because Shopify wasn't what Shopify was, right? Back in 2012 is what it is today, right? Like you just couple buttons and you have a whole website ready to rock and roll, So I think product was really important because like it took a lot of effort for people to do it, But then what happened in maybe like 2019 to 2020 up until maybe a couple years ago, product to me almost started to get devalued because everyone said storytelling and marketing is actually what sells more. And I still actually believe that, right? You see some of the crappiest products getting sold and crushing it. Now, will that brand succeed in the long run? Most likely not.
I think one of the terms that's missing in this conversation is product market fit.
Sure.
Because in SaaS, they talk about it all the time. Yeah. Like product market fit. Like, you need a great product, but you also need a great product that has fit within the market. Like sometimes, yes, good marketing can sometimes create that fit. And I think everyone goes back to like the toothpaste example of like the 1900s. Like, oh, they they convinced people of like how needed it was because of the foam, right? Like they made it foam, and then they would market that
So it
as
felt
like
it was cleaning them.
it felt like it was cleaning them, like so they felt a clean feeling.
Yeah.
But a lot of e-commerce companies, in my opinion, just will not accept the fact that there is something called product market fit, even with consumer goods. And sometimes your product has it or sometimes it doesn't. And you find, I think the great thing about Kickstarter, going back to Kickstarter, is it's a validator of how much product market fit you actually have. Now, it might not be a great validator of your total obtainable market or maybe your total addressable market.
Sure.
Like you might not really understand because maybe it's a niche product and you have like a really cult crowd that wants it. But it is a great opportunity to get on there. And like you said, you get validation very quickly of if you're at least in the realm of product market fit, and then you can iterate off of that.
Well, that's kind of the point I was trying to get to, right? Is like, as time has come on, like people are starting to recognize how much more important good product is to sustainably keep their brand going. But sometimes I think people get nervous to go through the product development stage because one, they don't really know how to do it. Like, how do I test if there is product market fit?
Yeah, sometimes I think, like to your point, you know, I wanted to emphasize product market fit because product development, I think, becomes an endeavor unto itself.
Yes.
Like we're developing product, like it just in this loop with no really idea of the outside scope of does this product even fit within the market?
Is it going to work? Is it right for us? So that's why, like, I actually really, you don't see a lot of people doing what you're doing with Kickstarter.
Right.
I would say it's actually happening a lot less, right? We have some clients who use it, like we talked about Quality, right? They generally don't create a new product unless they go through Kickstarter. And it's, a lot of people think it's for capital purposes, but I like what you just said. That's actually not it. Hey, we could totally fund
we could do
this tent, but we want to go through and validate to make sure that people actually want it.
I would say this hammock is a unique, kind of case study for it. So we launched with our regular Haven tent, and then we launched Haven XL 1 year later, just kind of as a regular launch. And then the next year, everybody was pushing for us to make a lighter hammock, which is easier said than done because now you start working with different materials and there's all of these different constraints. But I saw that there was.
And also, like, are you catering to like 1% of the crowd? Like,
Sure.
The most outspoken 1% versus that, bigger part of the curve there.
Where were you? Can I ask a really quick question? Because I want you to finish the story, but where are you getting this information? Is it on social? Are you surveying people? What's a little everything?
A bit of the squeakiest wheels. So it's on social, being in the community. And then honestly, when we go to shows and we're showing the hammock to people, like you just get real time feedback so quickly, and you make great content too.
Totally,
but you're just getting this, real. So people, the first kind of hang up that people have is, it's not an ultra light system. Our standard is about 6.5 pounds. With you pick all of the lightest options, it makes it about 6 pounds for our standard Haven tent. The XL is about 7 pounds.
I was gonna say
with all of our lightest options, but that's with the pad, right?
I was gonna say this is not that heavy considering that there's a pad.
Yeah, there's a pad in there, and that's just it. It's not that heavy, but it's not going to be like your hyper light system.
Yeah.
For a 5-day hiking trip.
At the same time, I saw this push for canvas tents.
Yeah.
Where people. There's a lot of companies that make really, really good canvas, heavy, big tents. And
like
there's no canvas hammocks out there. There's no, glamping hammocks.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what if we made one of these just as comfortable as possible? Again, that's kind of been my design thing. Like, how can we make the pad more comfortable? How can we make this more comfortable? Just 100% kind of focused on comfort. And if weight wasn't an issue, how comfortable could we make this thing? And that's what we came up with Safari. And so we launched something that had never been before. Nobody's ever made a canvas hammock.
Sure.
Nobody's ever tried to see how heavy they can make a hammock. It just hasn't been like part of the, product. That product development loop has always kind of tended towards being a lightweight hammock.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really know what kind of market there would be for it. Yeah. Launched the Kickstarter. It did really well. It kind of proved that, there is a spot for this product, which helped convince a lot of our, retail partners. Oh yeah, this actually is pretty cool. And now XL is our top selling product, but this is number 2.
Yeah. What is your anticipation for the lightweight one?
Oh, I have high hopes for it.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. It's
Nice.
super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the weight supposed to be? Because that one you said is 7 or 6?
7
That
with
one?
the pound.
7,
with the
and
pad.
it'll be the same hammock, and it'll be around 4. The lightest option will be about 4.5.
Cool.
With the pad. And
Which is a huge difference.
The more
That's-
basic option will be around 5 pounds. And so it's still not going to be hyper light. So when people are doing the Pacific Crest Trail or whatever, and they're, cutting their socks in half or like just trying to conserve as much weight as possible, like it's probably not going to appeal to that crowd. But like the guys that are going to hike in a few miles or go for a week-long backpacking trip, like totally within the realm, and you're able to be as comfortable as you are in your bed at home.
Sure.
So like that is going to be a huge, value proposition, I think.
Totally. Very cool.
So worried about weight when Samwise had
Gamgee?
cast iron
I
all the
know.
way to Mordor.
All the way to Mordor.
Jeez.
What a stud though he was.
Yeah.
Right?
People cutting their socks.
And Frodo
in half.
just is out there carrying his little ring around.
Just
in
nothing.
his,
Yeah.
There's a nice metaphor in that. The ring, although light
The
in
weight.
weight, was heavier in spirit.
That's true. That's right.
That's true.
Maybe that is the heavier burden.
That's right. I think it was. Yeah. I think it was. Now I'm just thinking about Lord of the Rings. How has product development been from what's your returning customer look like? Is it, do you have a pretty solid returning customer rate? I mean, this seems like my guess is these aren't wearing out.
Right.
Right.
So we were looking at it last week, actually, and the number one repeat purchase after somebody buys Haven XL hammock, which is our biggest main hammock, is another Haven XL.
Yeah.
Which is cool to see.
Sure.
It's a one-person system, so
Yeah.
it means that they are enjoying it enough that they're going to go buy it for somebody else in their family, maybe
Sure.
a spouse or
Yeah,
whatever. And so we've been able to tack on some accessories as well, again, focusing on comfort. Like, how can we just improve the camping experience?
Yeah.
And I would like to evolve away from just being a tent hammock company to more of an outdoor, like let's just make the outdoors as great as possible.
Totally.
And so, it's fun because we do see a lot of repeat customers. We see these communities growing and like little pockets. And there's an event that somebody in our company goes to every year called HaneCon. It's in Florida. And this last time there was Haven Village, they called it. I mean, Haven is kind of like a, gimme, but they called it the Haven Village. And there were like 10 Haven tents that were all set up around each other. And, they're going to have like a sign made for next year and everything. So it's fun to see these communities.
I was
grow.
actually just thinking about that. Like this is disrupting the outdoor experience in a lot of ways.
Right.
Right? Because I think everyone, when they think of camping, like they're thinking, okay, we have to get a tent up. Right. And then it's usually, if you're a family, even if you're not like a big family, generally tents end up being communal, right? Like a 3-person tent to 6-person tent or 2. But like with a better sleeping experience, and it just takes up less space. Like I'm picking this up, right? This is an XL.
Yeah.
Like this XL is with the pad is like basically a tent.
Right.
Right. But with such a better sleeping experience, like why would a family prefer to get 4 of these? Yeah, maybe they're not sleeping all in the same quote tent.
Sure.
But
I mean, there's some advantages to that, honestly. Like, let's be honest. The snoring, the
I was gonna say, 'cause,
smells, the rolling
well,
around.
and then
Like,
someone isn't sleeping. Someone's always not sleeping well.
Someone
and
always
if someone's
snores.
not sleeping well, then they're gonna get up and move.
Oh yeah, nothing's worse than
and then they zip. Zzz.
Like when I camp, oftentimes when you're camping, you're doing like you're being active, right? So I feel like whenever I camp, I'm drinking a ton of water. So I feel like I have to wake up and pee once, no matter what, twice sometimes, and I hate that like, and my wife and my kids and I like the next morning my wife's like, well, thanks for waking us up. I'm like, dang it, you know.
Yeah,
So,
and outside
there's
of getting a
tons of it.
trailer, like how do you fix that experience?
right. And this
is probably the only way
we keep
to
going
fix
back
it.
to that pain, right? Where so many people love camp. Like, I love fishing. I love being outside. I love all of these things.
Yeah.
But they struggle with that sleeping experience, right?
Yeah.
And also it's about being present in the outdoors. A lot of times when we set up a tent, it's like you hike to this beautiful spot and then you hide out in a little cave for like part of the day.
Yeah.
And you can't see a darn thing. With this, you know, you get the fly that's guide open. You can see 360 degrees. You can see everything.
Yeah.
And so you're actually like
Immersed
present and
into
immersed
it.
in the space. Yeah.
Would you say, like, who is your customer? Like, we were kind of talking about this a
Right.
little bit, you know. Would you say you have this like predefined customer, or would you almost say, like, based on this conversation, I'm almost feeling like, hey, our customer is the person who's experiencing this problem. So it's not even like a age XYZ, they camp X amount of times,
Right.
or is it that type of person?
I think that you have that as a core.
Yeah.
But I think that where we've been able to do well and grow, I mean, we've sold nearly 40,000 of these hammocks over the
Amazing.
last, so we've sold quite a few of these things.
Yeah.
And how we've been able to do that is honestly by expanding outside. So when I started the company, obviously it's a hammock.
Yep.
And so you could, when I named the company, I named it Haven Tents to initially just like step back from that little circle of hammock camping.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the camping space and then you zoom in on how the percentage of people that camp, how many of those guys sleep in a hammock? And I say guys because very, very few girls sleep in hammocks.
Yeah.
It's like a very small little circle,
Yeah.
right? And those companies do such a good job. They've been there for so long. They have these great branding. They have everything just totally dialed in.
Yeah.
So rather than competing in that space, I don't know, let me position this as a tent because really
Yeah.
the sleep experience is completely different.
Sure.
It's yes, we have a hammock, but it's not like sleeping in a hammock at all.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so
have
that
you
circle
done any
becomes
research
bigger.
about that pain point with men and women?
I just know when
Do women like is sleep a bigger pain point for women when they go camping than it is for men generally?
yeah, I mean,
Because just this is totally subjective,
right,
but
You would say yes.
in my family, that's for sure what it is.
Yeah.
right,
Like just from all the women I know in my life, like
right.
the men like to go camping, the women like to go outdoors, but the sleeping part is just like, I don't
what turns
want
them
to
off,
deal with
yeah.
it.
Yeah, one of the best comments that we get pretty often is my wife will go camping with me now, which is just a cool thing that like they
Yeah.
were, maybe it was something they did when they were younger. And then the wife's like, I'm over that. And now
Yeah.
she's going back out there. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting people outside. And last year we did a poll and we were bringing people to our site for some other reason. But while they were there, we asked them, a few questions to kind of get to know them a little bit. And we asked, before getting involved with Haven Tents, what kind of a camper were you? Did you sleep in hammocks? Did you sleep in tents? Or were you a non-camper?
Yeah.
And 35% of our customers identified as non-campers.
35%.
Self-identified as
Interesting,
people
yeah.
that before getting a Haven tent, they did not camp. And so it's like a smaller piece, but still that's a huge piece.
Well, 35% is
yeah.
pretty substantial
Yeah.
for a camping product.
Right. And the fact that we are connecting dots for people saying, oh, I'm not a camper, but I would if I had this.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's also interesting what you said that one of the number one responses you get is like, now my wife comes camping with
I mean,
me.
that's not but we hear that quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's not like the number one thing,
Yeah.
but we get that a lot. Or like, oh, I used to love camping, but my hip was hurting too bad or whatever.
Sure.
And now I love it. Like when you read some of the reviews, we get a lot of those stories
Yeah.
of like, born again campers because
Sure.
now they can sleep
Born again
comfortably.
campers.
Yeah.
That's a good term.
That's a good term. Yeah.
That is a good term. Yeah, I love that because it shows that you've identified a problem and that you're working to fix an actual real problem, not just that you experienced, right? Because sometimes we experience a problem that's quite unique and we think everyone's experiencing it, but it's like, is it really product worthy? But you went down this exploration and discovered like, oh yeah, I mean, look at how many people have stopped camping, because that example you said is very relatable to a lot of people. I used to go camping as a kid. My dad took me camping a few times as a kid or whatever it is. Like they have a few experiences as a kid and they loved it. But then as they got older, it's just that experience of sleeping in a tent and just like the nuances of it just became not very fun.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming fun again because, hey, if you can get a good night's sleep, that does change the camping experience very significantly.
Yeah.
And not just your nights, it changes your days too. Your
Oh,
days are
for
better.
sure.
So it's like the whole thing is better.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Sleep dictates
So
everything.
our goal is to make sleep the the highlight of camping, which obviously it's going to be the other stuff, but like imagine looking forward, like, oh, I'm going to go camping next week and I'm going to go fishing and I get to sleep in my Haven tent.
Yeah.
We have a guy, Bill, and he's now on, what day is it today in January? It's January
28th.
So he spent 28 nights in a Haven tent so far this year, right? And he's like posting every single, night that he does it.
Yeah.
How many nights?
28. So every night of the year, his goal is to spend the first month of the year sleeping in a Haven tent every night. And he's in Utah. It's been cold.
Yeah.
And he's posting and he's just having like the time of his life. And so it's fun to, as somebody who created a product, to see it being enjoyed to that extent is just awesome.
One thing that number though, that 35% number is actually pretty crazy because we always talk about expanding your market.
Right.
And the fact that you're getting 35% of your customer base that are not campers in a camping space to come and buy your product, I would say that's got to be pretty significantly high.
Yeah.
I think it's shocking, actually.
Which means
That's
you're starting to break outside of this, like, hey, we're just targeting campers, like people that want and are camping now, to get a better product to people who aren't even engaging in the activity.
Well, you've broken out of your addressable market, right?
Yeah.
Or the obtainable
attainable into the,
and you're expanding
total.
it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the Safari has done so well, because with our other tents, they are focused on, hey, you're already camping. Here's a better way to sleep outside. Yeah. And then this one goes, hey, you don't even have to leave your car. You can just camp right there at the campsite and you're going to have a great night's sleep. And it makes it really, approachable, I guess.
How long does it take to set them up? Because that's another pain point for people, right?
Yeah. So what I hate about setting up tents is you have to set them up twice. You set up the tent first, then you have to put up the rain fly, right? And all the poles, and you're trying to, slide them through the little deals. And hammocks are confusing as well, because you set up the hammock first and then the rain fly, and you have to guide out in all these different places. This has 2 connection points. So you put straps around trees, you connect the hammock. You'll have to put the rain fly on the first time, but then you never have to take off the rain fly again. So it stays on there the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I can do it. Honestly, what takes the longest is blowing up the pad. And
which you have a pump
for that. Yeah. And the stuff sack for the pad is also like a bellows, so you can use it as a pump bag. And so we tried to just go through every single, and then if you look at how like baggy the bag is, for the hammock, a lot of times when you buy a tent, it looks really good on the shelf.
And then you can't ever get it back in.
There's no way you can shove it back in there. So we went and made the stuff sacks loose, so that it's easy to get back in.
Super smart.
I tried to just solve all the pains that I had as a consumer. Quick setup, easy takedown, and just tried to put it all into one product. So it's fun to be able to make.
Do you think you can get this tent set up in under 5 minutes?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can do it in like 2 or 3.
What about one of us?
One of you guys first time might take you 5 or 6 or so.
Which is crazy, right? Because I just went camping as somebody who set up the same tent over and over. When I say I just went camping, September or something like that, right? And it took me 15 to 20 minutes to set up like a 5-6 man tent.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask, because that's one of the other biggest pain points of tent camping.
Over and over putting it away too is a dream, because if it rains, like how muddy it is, like, I'm gonna have to set this up in my basement and let it dry out.
Sure,
and you can keep it off the ground the whole time, just kind of roll it back up, then put it back in the baggy stuff sack, and you're good to go. We try to make it just,
and you're not like worried about the dirt, and that's pretty.
Yeah. Well, here's what I love about it. I want to kind of go back to this product development process.
If I didn't give you guys Haven tents, I might have sold 2 here, right?
Yeah, you've
already sold me. I'm gonna have to get some for my family.
Yeah, Grayson over here sold too. But so this is what I love. So Mark and we talk about this all the time, and I bring it up all the time. Maybe you guys get annoyed by this, but there's this good different chart that I bring up all the time. And essentially, it's not just about product development, it's about marketing campaigns. It's anything you're doing as a business, you should put it through this good different kind of like exercise, which is to say, if you have an X and Y axis and you have different quadrants, right? I think if I remember right, the Y-axis represents good and the X-axis represents different. And in your world, right, you could have, you go on this fun excursion with your family where you're traveling and let's say maybe you're staying in some hotels, maybe you're staying in some, maybe you're camping a little bit. I don't know if you were, but anyways, you have this idea for a hammock, but what you could have done and what most people do is they say, you know what, I should create a tent, right? Like I want a tent. And okay, every tent is.
So how do I just keep making the same thing?
Yeah. Like the point I'm trying to make is you got Coleman out there who makes a tent. You probably know all the other tent names, right? And every tent is the same at the end of the day. They have some different features that's like.
Well, you've got like the spring bar versions, and then you've got a
little more lightweight.
Then you have the white lightweight pack.
Or hey, we added like LED lights to it, which are cool features, but are they different enough to make somebody say, I'm going to buy that? Or are they different enough to make somebody say, oh, we just saw Coleman do this, we're going to add it to it, so it's very easy. So that's what I love about this is like you didn't go down the route of which, like what is the easiest barrier of entry, which is everyone loves tents, therefore what if I created a tent brand and I just added some additional features, but at the end of the day, that wouldn't be different enough for me to be like, I'm going to go with Haven Tents versus, guess what? I just walked by Costco, saw a Coleman tent.
Right.
It's only $300 versus the $550 this one costs. I'm going to buy that one. I know Coleman. It fits my family, et cetera, et cetera. And so I love how you may not have necessarily been going through the different.
When I watched your video about this, it's like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why we sell a lot of hammocks. It's
totally,
because it's
right?
good and different.
Yeah. And you based your entire product development strategy off of a core problem that the most savant campers have and the most basic campers have.
Right.
Which is you still like, no matter what, like you said with the hammock, like it's a crappy sleep. I do it because I love fly fishing so much that I'm okay with a bad sleep.
Yeah. Like I love fly fishing enough, and it's usually a day. It's a 2-day thing. I have kids. Like I'm not going to be spending like 5 days out there. Right. So it's like
where I'm like,
I need to get there and back, and I don't want to spend 15 minutes setting up a tent.
Yeah. Where I'm like, I don't love fly fishing enough to justify the bad night's sleep. So I just rather not go, even though I love the outdoors. And every time I go camping, I'm always like, Ken's, that's my wife. I'm like, why don't we do this more often? And she's like, well, because we don't like to sleep in tents. Yeah. That's why we don't do this more often. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, now you're going to do it more often.
So I love that. You based your entire product development strategy off of this. Hey, everyone, the good the experienced campers and not, everyone has a hard time sleeping.
Yep.
And I think that that's the brilliance of what you're doing with Haven, and every product that you're creating, it still solves that problem.
Right.
Hey, I'm trying to make this one light. That's a new feature, like a little bit lighter, but at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. It's helping people sleep better and have a better experience at night, which then helps them have a better experience in the day, like you said. So the good different chart is undefeated.
It is. It is undefeated.
That's a quadrant.
That's
a quadrant.
I like that.
Right there. So, how has, we talked a ton about product development. The other thing that I've been loving that you've done really well, and I'm like wanting to ask you questions, but I'm also like answering questions in my head as I'm like thinking about this. Has creating content been so much easier for you because the product just tells the story itself?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And what I found as a content creator in the travel space was, man, my content is the product here, and I'm going to have to do this like forever.
Yeah.
If we grow this audience, if we become outdoor, family travel content creators, there's no tangible good here. And the second the views drop off of a video, like I'm out of business. I got to go out there and create more and more and more. But what that year of travel and constant content creation taught me how to do was how to make mediocre content very efficiently. And I say mediocre. If you're not a content person and you see some of the stuff that we do at Haven Tents, you're going to think it's probably pretty good.
Yeah.
But then you see like actual content creators and like with their transitions and their masks and all their stuff. And it's like, wow, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't put in the energy for that, but I do it quickly.
Yeah.
One example is we were at the at the Western Hunt Expo, which is a show that we do here in Utah every year. And I had a tripod set up when people were getting in the tent. I was filming this kind of reaction video of just first impressions. And I filmed like 20 testimonials one day. And then that night I smashed them together and made like a little bit of a reaction video.
Yeah.
And that started to do pretty well on TikTok.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked, I want to see the whole presentation.
Yeah.
And so my wife, Kenzie, who's also Mackenzie, was helping me that day, with the booth. And so she filmed just the next person who came by.
Yeah.
And she filmed them. This gal got in the hammock. I gave my whole spiel, my whole pitch. And that night went, cut it, posted it, and that blew up for us. It's done collectively across all the different channels that we have. It has over 40 million views.
Nice.
This presentation.
I know exactly what video you're talking about.
People are electing to watch me give a presentation talking about how great the hammock is, you know? And anyway, like the lift that's done for us has been huge. Yeah. And so like being comfortable in front of the camera came just because I'm too lazy to try to find, you know, talent to go and be in my stuff for me. It's much easier for me just to bring a tripod. Totally. And then like being able to put out content that's okay, but like good enough pretty quickly has been huge for us. Yeah.
How did you get comfortable with good enough? Was it the travel?
Yeah, man. How do I get comfortable with good enough? I guess I think
everyone overthinks it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm not saying I would do it too. You know, I don't produce a lot of content, but like when I think about content, I think
it's a good question, actually. Like, this is a good question. I like it because you're right. Everyone's like, oh, well, the edit's not good, or I didn't get the good shot.
I said something weird.
Yeah.
I don't like the sound of my voice.
It doesn't seem on brand or whatever. So
yeah. And how do you make those decisions? Because I've done some stuff I've put a lot of thought into and a lot of care, and it just like doesn't do well at all. Yeah. And then there's that one video that's pretty organic and it's just, and it blows up.
Half-baked and
half-baked.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't think this is going to work. And honestly, having TikTok is kind of like my testing ground.
Sure.
Has been great. It's kind of like, I don't care as much about TikTok because I think that we have a good following there. It's like 130 some odd thousand. Yeah. But at the same time, I haven't put any like weight on it because it was going to be here, it was going to be there. Like, who knows what's happening with it. So I I don't mind throwing stuff at TikTok and seeing what sticks. Yeah. And then if it like, I'll kind of, refine it and put it on Instagram, and then I'll put it on shorts. So I'll end up posting something three different times and maybe doing like a slight improvement. Yeah. But I guess it's just lowering standards. Yeah. Like not saying every video has to be like elite quality edits. Yeah. Has been awesome. Yeah. And we have had a few creators make high quality stuff for us, and I post it and it just falls flat. Like it just doesn't convey what we're like our message of this is a small business. Yeah. Like a family, company this guy's going to be out there with his kids making videos about hammock tents. Like that has kind of become our brand. Yeah. I mean, we've been saying this for the last, are we on year 3 of this?
I don't know.
We are, I think.
Are we?
Yeah. Like for the last 3 years, we've been saying founders always just need to be in the videos. Like I know it's hard and some people don't want it, but no one does it better. Yeah. No one does it better, like, yes, get creators involved, right? Like you said, you've got this guy who's doing the 31 days of Haven. Like that's awesome creative. Yeah, for sure. Right. And that's reassurance. And I would imagine, you said that, or do you do post-purchase surveys at all?
We do.
Yeah. Like I imagine
not like super in-depth ones, to be honest.
Yeah. But I would imagine that if you ask the question, how did you first hear about Haven Tents? I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that your number, I don't know what your ad spend is, but between 1 and 2 position is friend or family member.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Guaranteed. And that my guess is over 30%. Yeah. Of those people. So, what I think is really cool about going back to this, I just keep circling back to product is we just like the client that we just went and visited, that whole story, the shebang about us traveling, we had a huge conversation about them creating content and becoming an authority in the space where they have a really, really awesome product. And one of the founders, what she was saying was she's like, we know we need to, but it's so hard to think of the content. It's so hard for us to take, like, that's the hardest part is like thinking about what we're going to do. It's not even producing it. It's not even editing it. It's like, what should we do? And part of it, and they would, I'm not saying anything that would be disrespectful to them. They don't have much of a different product. It's the same thing a lot of people sell. They're not manufacturing it on their own. They're like more of a distributor of it. And so they don't have anything real different. And what's so nice about having something that's different is you probably don't have to think much. on. I'm not trying to take away from
for sure.
the content you're creating, but like, you know, somebody comments like, let's see the whole thing. Okay, cool. That's a video.
Yeah.
You know, you could almost turn every one of your questions in your comments into the next like 45 days worth of content strategy. And that's the beauty of having product market fit and solving problems, is not only do you connect with the customer better, but it's so much easier to just create content.
Yeah.
Like it's just like good product development solves every single problem.
Well, you just showed us a video of you QAing a product, right?
Yeah.
With salt bags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. To test the actual weight capacity of a lightweight hammock, which is like, that's content.
And it's a story too.
Like that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give away the details, but
wild stuff.
Yeah.
Wild. And so my cousin Blake, who we've already talked about, and you know, my cousin Matt, these are my besties that I do my adventures with. And so we used to do adventures anyway, but now that I have this outdoor company, it all of a sudden falls under the thing of Haven.
Yeah.
And so we love using our product. Last year we went to, was it last year? No, 2 years ago we did a pack rafting trip in Alaska. So we go to Alaska, we do this awesome trip, we film content the whole time, and then I get like the long form, you know, YouTube video, and then a bunch of short form content. And like when we're just out there using our product, I'm filming, and then you're able to cut that up and put into all sorts of different way. And that content ends up serving you for a year or so, you know, each trip. And so the IRS you can easily see that this trip to Alaska was a business trip, you know, it was a work trip, but just being out there and using the product. And if you have a product that's not as weird as a Haven tent, like just filming your product in use and then narrating the story. One of the best videos that I did recently was I just set up a tent and I just talked about it as I was setting it up and then posted that.
That's awesome.
And that did really well. And so if it's I think you can do that for any product.
Yeah,
just talk about it using the product. It has this like ASMR quality where people just kind of get like sucked into watching the process of a product in use, which has been helpful. But
the ASMR trend's kind of interesting, right? Because people love watching how things are made. And so it makes a lot of sense, like why, like if you start from the beginning, like just like box openings even.
Well, and it's kind of like a hook, right? Like if you're saying something and you're strapping something around a tree, they're like, what's this guy doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they always say.
But I think that would apply to nearly any product.
Have you done like a strict ASMR ad yet?
No, I have not. But that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I need to do one.
Because you have like the zip, and then you have the wrap on the tree.
For
you
sure.
have like this noise, right? The canvas on canvas.
Canvas on canvas,
And then
the air.
And then the air.
And then like the last bit of
might have to like kind of dull that down a little.
The last bit of ASMR should be you laying and it being like a
well, it's like that cushion.
What I mean? Yeah. You hear like the cushion and then the last thing is him like exhaling, you know?
Yeah. You should try that.
Awesome.
There it is.
You can have that idea for free.
Sweet. I love it.
Well, dude, this has been awesome. Any tips? Like if you had like a last minute piece of advice that you would give to, like you're a listener of the podcast, right?
Right.
So as a listener of the podcast, like what's something that you'd want to hear if you could go back 4 years ago for yourself that you've learned?
I mean, the more time you spend learning in the beginning of your business, the better. And I know that's probably not talking about my product in particular, but just like my daily, you know, maybe it's not a daily, but every couple of days watching your videos, like it's awesome.
Yeah.
And so connecting with the e-com community.
Yeah.
And connecting with people that are out there influencing. And like when I started this, I knew how to sell, I knew how to tell a story, but I didn't know anything about ads or product design or like all of this stuff. I remember sitting on an airplane and somebody told me about SketchUp, which is like the Google tool for 3D modeling.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, what? You could do this? And I had spent hours building paper models and doing all this nonsense.
Yeah.
And just like, so if you're open, if you just acknowledge the fact that you don't know anything and you're open, you go to the source of information and you just like become a student again. And I have young kids that are in school and they're learning. We become adults, we kind of stop. And so maybe the one bit of advice to look in the camera is to like become a student.
Cool. Yeah.
I love that.
Super smart. I like that too.
be coachable.
Yeah. And that doesn't just necessarily mean what I like you're saying. That doesn't necessarily mean go read all the self-help books.
No.
Right. It means like go meet and talk to people.
Oh,
like,
for
cause
sure.
like you said, like, hey, I've been wasting all this time drawing or whatever. And now, I got SketchUp,
And my
like
ability to,
that changes everything for me.
Iterate and make changes on products like went from glacial
Sure.
to like light speed.
Yeah.
The second I learned about a tool.
Totally. Very cool.
So you never know like when that aha moment's going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy because it's similar to going camping, right? Or going on a big hiking trip. Is you have to just enjoy the exploration because you're always going to encounter things that you don't know or that are kind of interesting, and you're always going to have to problem solve a little bit along the way. So being coachable, I think sometimes people think of like, I need to find a coach.
Yeah. No.
And maybe a coach
Sure.
might help you, right? A mentor, that's great. Like, we're not saying don't do that. But what we are saying is you just have to enjoy the process and be open to changing the way you're approaching it, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're hiking up a mountain or if you're a rock climber, especially like rock climbers, you might have to change your approach on the face to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
You can't just always go exactly the way you think you're going to be able to go up the mountain,
Sure.
right? So change your approach, just be agile, just realize like it's not a straight way up, right? It's going to be some zigzagging, like you're going to have to make some adjustments along the way. And if you're flexible, you'll be fine.
Yeah. And also acknowledge that like your chapter 1 is different than a chapter 20 from somebody else.
For
like
sure.
We get that all the time. Like I'll reach out to people and I'll be like, hey, for example, come on our podcast. Like, I'm only doing I'm only doing 5,000 sales. Like, well, it doesn't matter. Like you could be at the very beginning stages. Like that doesn't really matter. I think a lot of people get really almost embarrassed at those early stages to go out and reach out for help because they're like, oh, I don't want them to know how inexperienced I am or how little revenue I've made or how, you know what I mean? Where it's like,
or like we work with brands that are scared to show behind the scenes stuff because it's like, well, then they're going to see that we're not like this big polished brand.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's like that
doesn't matter.
actually, like I think that's
a
probably why
strength.
people would want
That's such a strength.
buy
And
from you.
honestly, as a startup, and like our first production runs had some issues, but the amount of leeway that people give startups is incredible. And the amount of patience versus like a Coleman or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if they have, 30% of their tents have an issue, like it's going to be huge and they're going to be blasted for it, but like they just understand.
Yeah.
And of course we've done everything to make it right and we continue to improve on everything, but lean into it. I mean, if you are if you're a startup and you're new, like, that is one of your biggest advantages and one of the biggest points of your story. Like the other thing I think that we've done well is we've found out who we are comfort outside, and we tell that story.
Yeah.
And we just focus on that. Like we can get bogged down in features and talking about like different elements of our product. But at the end of the day, what compels action is that comfort.
Yeah. Messaging is everything. People underestimate the power of messaging and then who your audience is. Like,
and defining who you are
changes everything. You don't even have to change your product and you can change those things and you can go from nothing to something really quickly. So
yeah, I love that too, because a lot of people focus on who their customer is and they kind of forget like who they actually are.
Yeah.
Like you get caught up in this idea of who you think your customers are when it's like, well, who are you actually? Like, what is your company? And you just said it. You've distilled it down to comfort outside.
Yeah. Which
allows you to now focus on, well, who are we attracting and who can we attract?
How can we test different messaging, et cetera, et cetera. So, well, dude,
sweet.
thank you so much. This has
Thanks
been
for having me
awesome.
on. This is
Where
so
can
fun.
people find Haven?
On Instagram, on TikTok, those are our main spots. Haventents.com is our site, but our handles are Haven Tents.
Cool. Awesome. We'll go follow them. Like seriously, such a cool product. And this has been so awesome. So thank you so much. And
Thanks for having me on.
We appreciate everybody for listening, Thank you. And
this might be the only episode that I don't listen to out of your guys's, but thanks for having me.
You're going to learn a lot from yourself. You're going to be like, I didn't know how smart I was. That's really cool.
Great.
All right, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And we will, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Unstoppable Marketer podcast. Please go rate and subscribe the podcast, whether it's good or bad. We want to hear from you because we always want to make this podcast better. If you want to get in touch with me or give me any direct feedback, please go follow me and get in touch with me. I am at the Trevor Crump on both Instagram and TikTok. Thank you, and we will see you next week.